Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our RA Q&A session. My name is Carly Berthume, and I'm the Graduate Coordinator for Student Staff Selection. And today I'm joined by some fantastic guests. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hey, y'all. My name is Jack. I'm a first-year RA. I was hired in May of 2024. I am a sophomore and a kinesiology major.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Collins. I am one of the assistant directors here. I currently oversee the coordinator for Lake Claire and Greek Park, as well as our student staff selection and leadership team.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So now I'm going to get us started with a quick presentation just to go over some basics. But if you'd like to start sending some questions in the chat, we will get to them very shortly. So again, welcome. This presentation will just very briefly go over what to expect as you're applying for being an RA, but we'll primarily focus on giving you time to ask some questions and review over the RA selection and interview process. So first off, what does an RA do? That's our most common question. So we kind of have broken up into 4 different categories where you create and maintain a community environment, several administrative tasks, serving an on-duty rotation, and implementing the residential curriculum. And what does the time commitment look like? So typically RAs work approximately 15 to 20 hours per week, depending on the week. We are duty staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. You do work move in and move out. You'll have weekly staff meetings, one-on-ones with your supervisors, work a spring, summer, and fall training, interact with your residents, which should happen pretty often. And you're allowed to have outside work, but this must be approved and it is up to 15 additional hours per week. And how to apply. The RA application is open now and will be open until Sunday, October 1st at 11:59. The application can be found on ucf.ereslife.com. You are required to have 2 references. We do recommend that one is from UCF, but of course that is not required. However, it is required that neither of them are family members. These references forms are due Monday, October 2nd at 2024 by 11:59. And alongside these references, we do have several application questions that are personality based. They are 5 short answers and kind of refer to your job preferences as well. You are able to edit your application up until you are finished and ready to submit, but please keep in mind your references will not receive the request form up until that application is submitted. And here's the application timeline. So we do hire for 2 semesters, the spring and summer semester. If you are interested in applying for the spring semester, you'd be hired by November 21st. However, if you were deferred from that semester, you'd find out by December 10th, and then you would find out for the spring by February 14th, 2025. You'll also find out on this date if you have been placed into the alternate pool, which we will pull from if we have any vacancies. All right, now it is your turn to ask us some questions that you may have. Just to get us started, I'm going to start with our first question towards Jack, which is, what has been your favorite experience as an RA?
So my favorite experience as an RA happens, so every summer when summer ends, we have a big summer staff meeting, and our summer staff meeting that we did this summer was a potluck, and it was really nice. It was a great experience for me, because summer had been a really big learning curve for me because I just started in the role. So getting to meet back up with all the staff that I see all the time, but I'm not always able to meet with them. it was nice to be able to sit down, eat food with them because it was a big potluck, and then just be able to talk about things that happened over the summer, our plans for the fall, things like that. So that was my personal favorite experience, was connecting with my coworkers.
Yeah, thank you. All right, our next question is, it is my second time applying as an RA. I was wondering if there are any general tips that you guys can offer for interviews. I will say my first thing is, in your interview, definitely be as authentic as possible. We are definitely looking for people who can learn and adapt to a new position. So I would say when you're in that interview, definitely make sure that you are not just trying to fit a certain mold, but truly being who you are and how you'll fit to that position. Jack and Jasmine, I don't know if you guys would like to add on to that.
Yeah, I'll add on to this a little bit. So the interview process for RAs was a little bit different than any other interview that I had ever been in, because the RA role in general is not a job that is very common. Like it's not something that you're going to go to another job and be like, oh, I was an RA, so this reminds me exactly of what being an RA was like. No, because some of the things that you're going to have going on as an RA, like late night calls or some crazy calls that you're going to pick up the phone and not know what they're calling about, and you just got to think on your feet and answer with the training that you have been provided with. So the RA like interview is pretty difficult, but I would just say be yourself. Take some time. I'm thinking of one question in specific that I'm not going to say because you guys are going to figure it out whenever you go into your interview. But I had a question in specific that I sat there and for probably 5 minutes just thought, because it was a difficult question. So take your time on your interview, think, and then just, yeah, like Carly said, just be yourself. They just want to know who you are. That's what an interview is. They've already seen your resume, but a resume doesn't tell all the tiny parts of you. It doesn't talk about who you are as a person. It just talks about what you've done. So you got to show them who you are.
I just want to echo what Jack's saying about time. So you do have like an hour for your interview. So like you don't have to rush it in within 30 minutes. Really take the time to hear our question, listen to what we're asking, and then provide some examples in your experience. And I also wanted to say, like, if you never had a job before this and you're applying for the RA job, that is perfectly okay, because you can still pull from experiences from high school and things like that. So don't feel like you have to have an experience that happened here at UCF or you have to have a job before this to provide experience. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for people to be themselves. So come up, show up, be ready, and then take your time through the process and see where you get.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Our next question is, what makes an applicant stand out? I would say when looking over applications for all positions within housing, something that is super important is ability to work on a team, and really showing that you work well with others is super important. Like Jasmine mentioned, for a lot of people, this may be their first job. So really going through experiences that you've had in your life in other different facets where you've showed, hey, I really love working on a team. That's something I've seen is super important. Jasmine has also looked over a ton of applications, so I'm sure she will also have very good insight.
I would say for the standout portion, what I'm looking for is attention to detail, right? So if we're asking for specific things from your application and it's there, great. Like you already got a score in my mind. But like if you're missing some of those details that we're asking for, or we told you need to show up to something, and it's the same thing for like our returner RAs. Like part of their like applications to go to a resume building workshop. If you don't do that, then like that was part of the checklist that we needed you to do. So like I would just make sure you have all your things done, and anything we're asking for that we have you fill out, that is like done the right way. But really, again, there's not like a one person's going to stand out over the other. It's really you showing up to show us who you are and see how well you fit amongst our teams as far as like each community.
Right, thank you. Our next question is, are there any restrictions that come with being an RA? I don't know if this refers to like external restrictions, but like I did mention, you are required to report if you do have another job that's outside of it, and you're able to work up to 15 hours. If you have any other clarification on this question, please feel free to ask. Jasmine, I don't know if you have any other insight on any restrictions, but I would say it's probably an important one. I saw Jackie raise her hand, so you too.
I'm gonna go on this, and then if Jasmine or Carly would like to shush me, please shush me. So I would say that in terms of restrictions, if you're questioning about lifestyle choices, one thing that is emphasized heavily during training is the fishbowl concept. And that is that as an RA, you represent the school. So that means that everything that you do is seen by others, because like I personally have 60 residents. When I am moving around campus or walking around campus, one of my 60 residents is got to also be on campus. So they will see me. I have to so in terms of restrictions, you have to carry yourself with a certain level of professionalism, a certain level of respect. You need to be careful of what you're posting. You need to be careful of what you're liking. You need to be careful of what you're doing, because it will all be seen. Every single thing that you do will be seen. So in terms of restrictions surrounding that, I would just say that you need to be very careful of what you're doing, because someone will see it. And if someone sees it, either A, they think it's okay, and then you're going to have to deal with it when then your residents are doing it, or B, your boss is going to find out, because they're going to know, all right, this is not allowed, and then your boss is going to find out, and then you get in trouble. So in terms of lifestyle restrictions, I would say that, yeah, I'm going to leave that there.
All right, moving on to our next question. It says, does the application automatically disqualify anyone for certain questions? For example, having a 0.0 GPA as I'm still completing my first semester. So yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. If you have not completed your first semester yet, definitely put a 0.0 GPA, just because you don't have a UCF GPA yet. That will absolutely not automatically disqualify you. We essentially do our own GPA checks prior to the applications being submitted. So do not worry, this was not going to like nullify your application, because we do have a lot of applicants that are first year students. So we fully understand that you don't have a GPA quite yet. So that absolutely will not automatically disqualify you. All right, our next question is, we are required to attend an informational session. Does attending this Q&A meet that requirement? No, actually, on the application itself, when you go to answer the questions about the informational session, you will see a link there on YouTube. That is a separate video that also has me in it giving a similar presentation. So can be a little confusing, but it is a separate video, and all those questions below will be where you can have those answered. So I would definitely go and check that out on the UCF Housing YouTube channel. It'll just be labeled UCF Resident Assistant Informational Session. So that's where you can find that to answer those questions. For our references, is it a form or a letter they need to complete? Is there anything you should mention or focus on if it is a letter? So the reference just receives a form that they will have to fill out. It is not a letter that they write specifically. It's more of a scale that they report to. So saying if they refer you for several different features that we look for in the RA position, but it's not something that they write on their own. Our next question, I'm going to pass on to Jasmine. How does studying abroad work as an RA?
So the RA job is like year to year, so May to May. So it really depends on when you get hired. I would say if you're going to do study abroad, I would try to do it over the summer. Because then at that point, we have some RAs that are exempt from work over the summer, and you would be one of the ones that would be exempt while you do study abroad and come back and work for us for the fall. Now, if you have something in the spring and the fall, we can bring you back in the summer or starting the next year, then we would do that. We would have that conversation. So it really just has to have an open line of communication with your supervisor and then your supervisor, so that assistant director. So that way we know if you are going to be studying abroad, so that way we would fill your position so we don't have a vacancy of that community, or we have that conversation of like, hey, we're going to have to let you go so you can do study abroad, or hey, could you move it to summer so that way you're here for the whole year and then you can come back and start with us in the fall.
Thank you. Our next question is, so I'm like on the club cheer team, and of course there are scheduled practices and competitions that are required for being on the team. Are there ways to work my schedule around these days? I'm going to give Jack the answer towards the end of the question, because I do think he can have some really good insight into like having external experiences. But something I will say is, when you do pick times that you're required to work in office for this position, you do have some flexibility where you essentially select the days you work. But of course, as you're working on a team, it's not always 100% guaranteed which days you can work, because we also have to work with the flexibility and the course schedule of everyone else. So essentially what happens is you will go like up and down the line of picking which days you are able to work. So unfortunately, I'm not able to guarantee that like all of those days would be able to be accommodated for, but typically you will be able towards the beginning of the year essentially know what the rest of your semester looks like, which is super good. But unfortunately, if for some reason you have a competition that shows up on a day that you are scheduled to work, that would be something that you have to figure out to switch the shift and also pick up another day to make sure you are working. Jack, I'm sure you'd have additional more insight if you'd like to give some.
Yeah, so kind of to what Carly said, to really echo that. So like she said, at the start of the semester, the entire staff gets together, and the first thing before anything else that is important is your school schedule, because we are still students. Every single one of us is a student. So after school schedule, then it becomes extracurriculars and things like that. Those are going to come next in terms of when you're picking shifts. So you guys are all going to pick your shift. You're going to get a duty shift for a weekday. So I work Wednesday nights. I work Wednesday nights because every other day of the school week, I have class conflict. So, like I said, class conflicts come first. I had church group on Wednesdays, but every other night was busy because of school. So I had to get rid of my church group. So that is a sacrifice that you have to make. I'm not saying that you cannot be on the club cheer team, because I was playing club soccer until I just decided to stop playing club soccer, but I made it work. But in terms of weekday shifts, I don't know how much the club cheer team practices, but you kind of got to be there's going to be a day where you're going to have to give, and you're going to have to work a week shift. Weekend shifts, I'll be pretty honest, you'll probably be able to go to every single competition and not have an issue with like weekend shifts. I have things that I have to work, and so I have weekends where I have blocked out. I've never had an issue. It's very simple. There are 9 other people in my building that can take my shift. So I send it in. Hey guys, can someone take my shift? They take my shift. And then I just take their shift. It's very, very flexible. But the big one, because of practices and practices specifically, you will have a night where you will have to work a duty shift every single week. Cool.
And I think something super important to discuss here is the concept of nights away. Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind going into that a little bit, just because I feel like this fits this concept super well.
Sure. So for our nights away, you get 14 for the full year. Semester lies. 14 for the semester. Essentially what that means is like you are able to, once you have that conversation with your supervisor, be like, hey, I'm going to need to not be on campus at all. So you'll submit that. Once they get that approval, you'll submit, they'll approve it, you're good to go, and then you can be off campus and do what you need to do, and then not have to worry about like your RA duties and that aspect of having to be on call. You are still an RA outside of, not being here. But so if you have a competition over the weekend and stuff like that, that's when you can do your nights away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our next question is, what are the benefits of being an RA? So much. So just to get started on some of the more logistical benefits, housing is included as a part of your compensation, which is so beautiful in Orlando. Trust me. You do also receive a consistent biweekly pay, which is also so beautiful and so fantastic. You do develop some super strong skills that are applicable to really any job. Like my experience in housing in my undergrad got me a marketing internship, and I did nothing with marketing. So it is truly like you will learn a bunch of skills and capabilities that can really be applied no matter what your major is. So it's a super good opportunity for that. Along the same vein, just a ton of personal, professional development. You'll be working on a team so consistently. Like Jack mentioned, you can handle some really fun and interesting situations that will allow you to develop so much. You'll have great mentoring experience, which is super great. Teamwork skills, like I mentioned, and it's also so much fun. Jack, I don't know if you want to go some of the little fun parts of your job.
Yeah, I'll go into fun parts in just 1 second. I would really say that the 2 big ones that you will learn is conflict management and crisis management. They're different. They're very close to, like, they sound similar, but they're very different. Conflict, you will have a ton of conflict with residents arguing with their roommates, residents arguing with other residents, coworkers arguing with coworkers. It all happens. That happens in a team environment. It's not a bad thing. It all happens. So conflict management and then crisis management. Crisis management is honestly pretty much our job. When things go bad, we're the first people that get called. So dealing with crisis as well. In terms of fun things, I love talking to residents. I love talking to people. That's why I'm on this Q&A panel, because I love talking to people. I love sharing my experiences that I have, and I love hearing other people's experiences and questions that they have. So talking to my residents, hearing about how their school week is going or how their exams are going, that's my personal benefit of the job. Is the pay nice? Yes. Is the housing nice? Yes. But at the end of the day, I love my job, and that's the biggest benefit of it is because I just like people and I like talking to people. So that's a big benefit for me. If you don't like talking to people, I'm gonna be honest. I don't want to be that guy and tell you this job's not for you. This job's probably not for you because a large majority of your job is talking to people, and they can disagree because they are my bosses. But that's my take.
Thank you, Jack. Um, Next question. Does it work the same way with summer internships? Jasmine, I'm sure you have a little bit more insight into this one as well.
Yeah. Short answer, yes. Long answer is it really depends on how many people need to be exempt from the summer. So we would need to communicate again. Like you get hired and say, hey, I can't because I have a summer internship. That's just a communication base. Sometimes we have some RAs that need to be here just up until the summer and then they're graduating, so they can extend. So that means you can go for your summer internship. And then there will be RAs that we hire for the fall that would like to start in the summer. So it's really just about communicating as quickly as soon as you get an offer to know if you're going to be doing a summer internship or not. So that way we can plan to have you come in the fall and then have somebody take your space for the summer.
Thank you. This next question is along a similar vein. How does it work for holidays like Christmas?
Do you want me to do it or you got it?
This one, because this one's actually a little bit different. So holidays we kind of go by them case by case. So some holidays like Veterans Day and Memorial Day, those are like Labor Day, things like that are 1-day holidays. So those are just considered a 24-hour weekend shift. So then one of the RA staff or two, because you always have a duty partner, sorry. Two of them will just take that shift and you will move on with your day. Things like Thanksgiving, which are 3 days off, you get Wednesday through Friday off. Those are also just another shift because two people are always on call 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or like that. So someone is always on call. So you will sit down with your staff and be like, all right, who's going to work Thanksgiving? This year, I'm working Thanksgiving. So I have the Wednesday and the Friday. Someone else has the Thursday. You can do all three. Christmas in specific is a little bit different because Christmas is much longer. Is Christmas consolidated? Yes. All right. So Christmas is considered a consolidated shift. So for Tower specific, because I don't know all the different communities. Sorry. Towers, I'm in Tower 2. Tower 1 is our consolidation partner. So instead of having 2 RAs from Tower 2, which would be 20% of our staff working, we only have 10% of our staff working. So only 1 RA from Tower 2 and 1 RA from Tower 1. Tower 1, say Tower 2 has the phone. Tower 1 will forward the phone to Tower 2 so that if any call goes to, anyone from Tower 1 calls, Tower 2 will pick it up and then handle both so that less people are working. But someone will always be working during Christmas and the entire time of Christmas break. It will not be me the entire time, but there are times where I'm going to have to be working. I think you do 2 or 3 shifts over Christmas break. Christmas break is 20 days. Christmas specifically, you can give your shifts away because they pay us extra on Christmas. So some people that don't go home because they live out of the country or they live out of the state or they're not going home for any reason. They love taking Christmas shifts. I personally want to go home, so I'm not working that much over Christmas. That's how Christmas works. If that doesn't make sense, ask another question. I hope I answered it. I think I did, but yeah, that's kind of how it works. Consolidation, less people working, but someone's still working.
Thank you. I also do want to add that typically they do also consider different religious beliefs and stuff like that. So if it's the extent of it's not going to be enforced on you that you are legally obligated and required to work on Christmas. There are typically a lot of circumstances where there are a good amount of people willing to work certain holidays. So I don't want to seem as though darn, luck of the draw, you just happen to get Christmas, because a lot of the time it will just work out where you do not. But again, it's not 100% guaranteed. All right, next question's a fun one. What do you guys exactly mean by shifts and what do you do during them? I'm going to give just a little bit of background before I let everyone give their little piece on it. But just to refer back to this page, it is a lot of where you are sitting in the office. You see that duty rotation deal in the upper right-hand corner. Essentially, during weekdays, when you're on shift, you'd work from 4:45 to 8 p.m. at the desk. And then you would have the on-call duty from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then weekends, it would be the similar. That doesn't sound about right. That is not right. I did not make this presentation. That is not correct. It is a 24-hour shift on weekends. I apologize for that, but it is a 24-hour shift on weekends, and that is essentially what it looks like. And during those 24 hours, you are not required to just sit and chill in the office. You are just required to stay in your community. You'll have an on-duty phone, answer some questions. Usually, it'll be a lot of like, "Hey, I need a lockout. Can you let me in my room?" Or it can be some like more big ordeals to deal with. Jack and Jasmine, if you'd like to give a little bit of insight on what duty looks like or shifts look like.
Yeah, she kind of crushed that one in terms of what exactly a shift looks like. Like she said, weekdays are like what I was talking about earlier. Say, because I work Wednesdays. So Wednesday at 4:45, I come and sit in the office and I just sit there from 4:45 to 8 o'clock. I always do homework because if I'm going to be in the room, I got to do something. I want to be productive. So Wednesdays, I do a ton of homework. And then from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., I'm on call. Either me or my duty partner are on call. We do it to where 1 week I'll have the phone, and then the other week she'll have the phone. Some people swap halfway through. Doesn't really matter. When you're on call, but you're not in the office, I always meal prep because I'm a big meal prepper. So the days that I'm working, I'm meal prepping, or I'm cleaning my room, or I'm things like that. You can do literally anything that you want. I know people that play the game, like they hop on the game, they watch movies. You can literally do anything. You do something they're called rounds. That means that you are walking the space that you live in. So for towers specifically, well, every community has to do 2 rounds on weekdays and 3 rounds on weekends. But weekends are 24 hours, so you do them kind of like 8 hours-ish apart. There can be a little bit of fluctuation because, like, obviously when you're sleeping, you're not going to wake up in 8 hours and do another thing of rounds. So you can do them like 10 hours apart. For weekday shifts, you do rounds at 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Sometimes people do them at 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., but the concept is the same. You just walk the space, make sure that nothing's crazy. Doors are closed, doors are locked, lights aren't out. If lights are out, you submit a work order. The place is quiet, things like that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. On a perfect duty shift, don't do a whole lot. You just kind of are on call. When you get a call, pick up the phone, you answer the phone, and you do whatever you got to do from there. That's pretty much it.
Awesome, thank you. This next question is, thank you for the GPA question answer. You're welcome. On the same note, what about the question about legal U.S. working status, since that can also change after the application deadline? That is a good question. So we do have a separate process of working with the UCF department that specifically works with international students, if that's what you're referring to. So it will not automatically disqualify you again. Of course, this is a requirement of the position to be able to work in the United States because it is a job. But again, that's something that we do work through with the department to make sure. We do have a separate set of steps for that. So if you'd like to email, I will actually throw my email down below. Right here, if you can see that. If you email any circumstances you're worried about, or if that circumstance is looking to change anytime soon, please feel free to reach out to me there, and we can go through some separate steps. Jasmine, I don't know if you happen to have any more insight on that, and I know it's a little bit more difficult.
Not really, because that one I think is like, the email is great because then we can pinpoint and ask, like, walk you through the process, but that one's very specific, so no, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, just please, I'll put it up one more time just in case. If you could just send over an email to reslifeselection@ucf.edu. Just list out any circumstances that you're experiencing, and we will make sure we go ahead and consider that specific case. This next question is, can we still go to games on weekends or no? I am a big football girl. I scheduled all my on-call shifts away from football games, I'm on call during Thanksgiving to go to football games. So this is an absolute yes. However, if you are on call or have the duty phone, you cannot go to games. You are required to stay in your community. I don't know if you've been to the stadium yet. There is zero cell service in there, so you will not get a call. And let's say you're in Nike and the stadium is a 35-minute walk. You will not make it back in time to be able to deal with a situation. So you would not be able to go to games if you're on call. But like I said, I did it. I planned my schedule around all of the games and just how happened to work out. So that's something that you're able to do if it also works with the other people's schedule. But for the majority, you will be able to go to games as long as you are not on call. Go ahead, Jack.
We also have RAs that are in the band, so they're obviously required to go, but their job, I think, takes precedence. Like their job in housing takes precedence. So they just schedule their time around games. I have coworkers that will not miss a game, like 100% will not miss a game. So they specifically do not work game days. It is very possible on your staff, 2 people are not going to want to go to football games. I guarantee you, not every single person on your staff is going to want to go to every single game. People will take the game shifts. If you want to go to a game, go to a game. I never work game days because I don't go to football games because I can't. I got another job that I have to work game days, but at least I'm able to go work my game days. So yeah, you're able to.
Thank you. All right, this next question is for the 24-hour shifts, do you have to stay awake for 24 hours? Absolutely not. That is not safe. We do not recommend that you stay awake for 24 hours. You will have a phone with you that looks like this. It is a big old brick, and it'll make a noise so loud, you will be so impressed. So no, you will not have to stay awake for 24 hours. We do just ask that even if you are like sleeping, please keep the phone within your vicinity. So if you do have a call, that is something you will have to go out to. We know it might seem a little crazy to go out on some odd hours of the night, but usually it is not super common, knock on wood, that you will not have to be out for like 9 hours on a certain issue. You know, it might be, hey, I need you to show up for this fire alarm for 10, 15 minutes, go back to bed. So I promise you do not need to be awake for 24 hours. We do not recommend that. This next question, what is your favorite thing about being an RA? Mr. Jack McNutt, you got this one.
All right, I'll take this one since I'm the RA. Like I said earlier, my favorite thing about being an RA is just talking to people. I love talking to my residents about everything that they have going on. I also love my staff. There is not a single person on my staff that I don't get along with and don't love. I hang out with my coworkers outside of work. So they're not just my coworkers, they're also my friends, which is also great because they're my neighbors. So it's really helpful that I love my staff and I think my staff loves me. So I would just say, for me, it's the people. Other RAs might have different things, but I would say that probably 80 to 90% of RAs, their favorite thing about being an RA is the people because our job is people oriented. So we all love people.
Thank you. All right, this next question is based off your personal experience, what are the odds to be able to start in the spring? This varies very significantly throughout the years, but it is pretty slim because the spring, it is not really just dependent on like, oh, your application was great, you're going to start in the spring. We hire in the spring based on vacancies. So in the event that there is a gap we need to fill in the spring, that is the event in which we'd consider somebody. So this does vary pretty greatly. Jasmine, I don't know if you have more specific numbers on what it has looked like historically, but I know it has not been a lot.
Yeah, so even last year, I think we had 10 RAs that started in the spring. So it's a very minimal amount. And as we progress forward, it will always decrease because we are going to be very intentional about like people that can be here for the full term, so that May to May term. So we won't really need to hire anybody in the spring unless somebody decides to step down or something else happens. So it'll be very minimal. We're probably looking in the next few years, I'd say probably the next 2 that will probably in spring have less than 5 RAs that we'll hire for the spring. So chances are pretty small.
Yeah, and also make sure when you're on the application, if you're interested in being hired in the spring, you are able to move spring and summer over into that preference box. So I would not recommend putting all your eggs in one basket and just putting the spring over. Definitely, if you're interested in the spring, absolutely put that as your like number one. But don't forget that you are able to select multiple options for your start date. This next question I'm also going to give to Jack. What is the hardest part about being an RA? What tasks or responsibilities of the role have been the most challenging?
All right. So I'm going to answer from a personal perspective, and then I'm going to answer for the majority of staff. Personally, I hate arts and crafts. I despise arts and crafts. So my hardest part about the entire job for me personally is floor decks and door decks because I despise arts and crafts. So that is the week after training, which is the week before the semester starts. We have to decorate the floors. And so getting all of those created and up, it takes hours. I don't know if you know that your RA put countless hours into your floor, but they did. It takes, I know that I was doing a leadership conference at the same time, but I was up every single night till 2 or 3 in the morning, like 6 days in a row doing floor and door decks. It literally takes like anywhere from 10 to 30 hours per RA. So that is my most hated part of the job. However, it's only 1 week a year or 1 week a semester. So it's not that bad. For most people who don't hate decorating as much as I do, I would probably say late night calls or dealing with crisis because it's the hardest part of our job, I would say. So getting a late night call at 2 or 3 in the morning. Like I got a call last night at 3:08 and I was like, I don't want to get up. But you know what? I got up and went and did that lockout. So that part of the job for a lot of people, they don't like. And then other people just really don't like dealing with crisis because it's a crisis. It's hard. A lot of the things that we deal with, like fires or residents that aren't well, like those things are hard. They're mentally taxing on us as just as much as they are on other people. So for other RAs, that's going to be the hardest part of the job. And they might have other insights from a more professional standpoint, but from the RA, that's my take.
No, I think you gave a great answer, Jack. I do just also want to add on, like obviously, like Jack mentioned, there are tough parts of the job, but there is so much support around you. Like Jasmine mentioned, your supervisor has a supervisor, and they have a supervisor. So there are always like a million people who are there literally to help you and support you. So if you do respond to a call that maybe is a little bit more difficult to manage, we do want you to tell us, like, hey, like that was something that kind of took a little bit out of me, and we'll absolutely talk you through that process of what it can take to really just make sure you are okay. Because at the end of the day, your well being is a huge priority. And like Jack mentioned, maybe you don't love arts and crafts. There are tons of RAs who will make door decks like once a week to be silly and fun. You will always find somebody who's super good at something and super good to work with. So I just want to highlight that you will have support at all times, which is super fantastic because obviously with every job there are difficult parts, but there are always people who have strengths that can kind of balance that. All right, this next question is, while not being on shift, are you required to stay in your community the whole time? How would it work exactly if a resident was to want to meet with you outside of your shift hours? Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind taking this one.
Sure. So to answer your first question, if you're not on shift, you are not required to be in your community. So if you're not in the office working, if you're not on call, you're on duty, then you don't need to be in your community. Now, if a resident wanted to meet with you outside of you being on duty, that's the communication for you and that resident. So if you needed to meet with them to create a roommate agreement and things like that, and that's outside of you being on your duty, then yes, you would have to work with them on your schedule and their schedule. But if they needed a question or whatever, then you can refer them to the office because there's RAs in the office that will help to assist with whatever their question. Now, if it's super specific to you or a situation you had helped them with, then you would just need to communicate with them when you are available to meet with them. But we don't want you to like stress yourself out of like having to meet with all your residents just because they have a question. Like if it's something that's simple and they can be referred to the office, send them to the office or call the duty phone and RA will answer, especially if it's off after hours and you're not on campus.
All right, thank you. This next question, I know Jack is so excited to answer this one, trust me. What are tips for time management while being a full-time student, being an RA, and also potentially having a job of being outside of being an RA? Just to start, I will 100% say organization is one of the biggest skills that I think you'll learn in this position. Being a student can be a lot for the first time when you're coming from high school, and you're kind of learning how to manage a bunch of different responsibilities. It can definitely be a lot, but time management is just super important, and really just taking note of all the responsibilities you do have and really not just trying to like wing it, but maybe being like, okay, let me create a schedule, let me create a timeline, let me create a checklist. Whatever that organization looks like for you is super important to implement. I know Jack has a couple of personal insights he's so excited to share.
I guess I'm really excited. I actually am, because time management is a big one. I actually gave a presentation last week about time management. So one thing that I will say before I start breaking down what I do for time management skills is they actually have during student staff training, we have a workshop on time management, and you guys can go to it, because one thing that people oftentimes as an incoming RA, they struggle with time management. So the professional housing staff was like, all right, we see that a lot of RAs are struggling with this. Let's do a workshop on it. So they give during training, if you're wondering or worried about time management, they have a workshop for it. It's super beneficial. I went to it this year. I didn't go to it in May, but I went to it in fall, and it was awesome. So I emphasize so heavily on finding a good calendar app. I use Google Calendar. I put everything that I have going on Google Calendar. Sometimes I forget to put something on there. Carly would know that I forget to put something on there, and then you find out that you forgot to put something on there. So when you have so many things going on between being a full-time student and you got an assignment due, or you got a class that you got to go to, or you got a study hall that you got to go to, and then being an RA, and one thing that we say is we call them tiny taskers. We get a lot of tiny taskers, and it's a lot of small things that you have to do, like doing your roommate agreements, or doing your nights, or doing your floor decks, going to a staff meeting, going to work, like doing your shift, doing all those things. There's a lot of things to do. So it's easier if you just write them down, because your brain can't handle them. Having a job as well. I have another job where I work 15 hours at, and then I have 2 other commitments. I teach a class that does not count as a job, so don't say anything. And then I work in ROTC as well. That also doesn't count as a job. So I have a lot of time that I am working at other places. And in those times, you have to get really good at time management. So every minute as an RA that you have available, you probably should be doing something, because especially if you're trying to be an RA and have another job so that you can make some more money to pay for college or something like that, you probably should always be trying to be busy.
Thank you. All right, what is the training like? So exciting. I'm just gonna give some background on it, and I think Jasmine will have some pretty good insight because she just helped out a lot with the one that just went by. But essentially, what you have to do is it's like a week-long 5-day like sessions where you essentially attend a variety of different presentations and different meetings where they'll essentially teach you the ins and out of the position. I see another question where someone asked about how to learn how to deal with the crisis. We absolutely do go over that. So something we did this year was like practical simulations, where essentially we literally just did a bunch of fake crises that we see all the time, walk the RAs through it just to see how those work. And it's super beneficial overall. So you will have every single thing you need going into this position. Jasmine, if you want to highlight a little bit more about the training.
Sure. So we do train actually 3 times in the full year. So we have our fall training, which is in August. And that's usually like our biggest training because that's when everyone's here. We usually do a December or January training depending on the academic calendar. And that's just for a few days, a little bit of a refresh, and then kind of getting you prepared for spring. And then we do a summer training, which is in May. So for anyone that's starting in the summer, they kind of come with that. And then we also have our conference assistants attend that training as well. So it is usually... they all are about a week long, depending on your spring, your summer, or your winter one. It just depends on the academic calendar. So those could be anywhere from like 3 to 4 days. But our fall one's always a week, so Monday to Friday, and we go over literally everything you could think of for the job. So, but I did see that question too. So like essentially, for the crisis management ones, we do crisis management, we do critical thinking skills workshops and things like that. So anything that the job aspect goes on, that's in your contract and things like that, we will go over for training. So we try to prepare you as much as possible for whatever situation can handle or be thrown at your way during training. And then it's kind of throughout the year, we have in-services and things like that too. So we will always touch base on that, but you also have staff meetings weekly. So if there's something you're concerned about or you just need a little bit more information on, that's the time to bring it up to your supervisor as well.
Awesome, thank you. This next question is, are you required to wear a uniform while in the office / answering calls, or can you deal with a lockout situation in your pajamas? I could be wrong. I always got this polo on when responding to calls and when in office. I believe that's the expectation for RAs, right? Okay.
Yeah. So whenever you're working, you are required to be in your shirt, which I don't have on because I'm not working. I'm here volunteering. So when you're working, you need to be wearing your shirt and you need to be wearing the name tag that they give to you. And then the expectation when dealing with a lockout, regardless of the time, is that you are wearing your shirt. And if you're not wearing your shirt, you at least need to have your name tag on. So anytime, regardless, you need to be wearing your name tag. When responding to calls, when you're not in office, it gets a little bit of a gray area. They would like you in your shirt. If you're not in your shirt, you're probably not going to get yelled at, but you need to have your name tag on. And that has to do with, say I'm doing a lockout, but I'm not, instead of doing a lockout at the door, I'm doing a lockout in the room. And then one of the roommates comes out and they're like, all right, who is this random person that's in my room? Then I can turn around and be like, hey, I got my name tag on. I'm an RA. So that it's kind of to protect yourself. It's kind of to protect them. Your name tag needs to be on at all times whenever you are responding to a call in the office. Is a nice one to have on as well.
All right, next question. You guys have shift change options. So yeah, like Jack mentioned, there will be times where he has to kind of swap his shift with someone else. But these are in the form of swaps. So this is where if someone else is working a shift that you would like, you'd have to communicate with them and get both sides approval to get that shift swapped over. And you also need your supervisor's approval, and you would just submit that online, which is super helpful. Next question, are you on call every weekday unless you schedule around taking a day off, or just after the in-office shift that you work? No, you are on call only a certain amount of days that are specified at the beginning of the semester. I'm not exactly sure how many days it is. I believe it depends on the community, but it is absolutely not every day. I know RAs who will have 2 weeks where they're not on call, and then the next week they'll have 4 days just because that's how they like to schedule it. But no, it is absolutely not every day. It is really dependent on at the beginning of the semester, those dates that you pick that I mentioned. All right, next question. I know what the tower's rooms look like, but for the academic village positions, would you be rooming with other RAs? No. You have your own room, which is so beautiful and so nice. And it's a nice little studio style apartment, which got a little kitchen and everything. Very cute, very sweet. Totally love them. Next question. If hired, are you required to work all 3 semesters? Or are you allowed to only work fall and spring? Jasmine, if you want to go over that process again of the summer exemptions.
Yeah, so if you have something like you have a job somewhere else, or if you have an internship, or you're doing study abroad over the summer, that's something we send out a form as well. So you can say hey, I would like to be exempt from working over the summer, and communicate to us why or what the reasoning is. And again, if we have people that need to extend their time with us until the end of summer, that's perfect because that can just be an even swap. Or if we have somebody that's coming that wants to start in the fall, or it's supposed to start in the fall but wants to start in the summer, again, kind of an even swap. So that way we can go ahead and approve your exemption. So there is a possibility that yes, you could only work fall and spring.
Thank you. All right. I think this should be our last question. Please feel free to throw any more questions in the chat if you have any remaining ones. But this says, does it take a long time to fill out the reference forms? It does not. In my personal experience, it has not taken super long. It should be a list of about 15 to 20 items that they will essentially just select from a drop down, being like, I think they're extremely good at this. I think they're pretty good at this. I think they're good at this. I think they could have some improvement in this area. So it's not something that is exactly super time consuming. This does depend on the references preferences of how much there's an option at the bottom to put additional information if they so choose, but this is absolutely not required. So it does not take a very long time. All right. I do not believe we are seeing any more questions. If you have any last minute ones, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Or you can always email me at reslifeselection@ucf.edu if you have any questions. We also have one more Q&A session next week. This will be in person from 5 to 6 p.m. On September 26th in the Student Union Key West Ballroom. So if you have any remaining questions, please feel free to show up. But yeah, our application is due October 1st, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. And we are super excited to see all of your applications. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.